nothing on the screen. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Hare Krishna. Welcome to another evening in the lives of the Vaishnava saints. My name is Chhatratma Das. We appreciate your patience. We've had big rainstorms through the area today, and one of the downsides of living out in the boonies as we do is that the least amount of storm and it affects the electricity. So we had some technical problems which we hope we've straightened out. Those of you that are in the chat room, our usual group, Bhakti and Carol, Dr. Patrick, Lovananda, I haven't heard from you in a long time. If you could just let us know if the sound and the picture are good. We appreciate your feedback so we know what's going on. And once we hear from you, then we can get that started. So, at any rate, thank you very much. I'm just waiting to get a little feedback from someone in the chat room to find out if this is... oh, there we go. So, thank you, Bhakti and Carol. All right, we appreciate that. Okay, we're set and ready to go. So, Hare Krishna. These last few weeks... Oh, and I did want to apologize for any confusion last week. I was attending a wedding and wasn't able to be here, so we're back and ready to roll. So the last couple of weeks we've been discussing different qualities of devotees and looking at examples in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas of these devotees and how their life represents the different qualities we're looking at. I was listening to a lecture this week, actually two lectures, one by His Holiness Radhanath Maharaj and one by Srila Prabhupada, both of which prompted me on the subject of mood of service. So I was thinking, what is the difference between material and spiritual? Really what the difference is consciousness. The consciousness impacts a material object, and then that object becomes under the direction, if you will, of the marginal energy, the jiva, and by his use, that object can actually turn to become spiritual. So there are many, many examples Prabhupada has always given of this. He would say when he was lecturing, what is the difference between this house and the house next door? Next door they have so many activities going on which are not Krishna conscious, and then here we have kirtan and japa and arti like that. So the house is not material spirits, how we use it. So one particular example that came to my thought process in this regards was the process of sweeping. Sweeping is an interesting concept because the idea itself has some particular thoughts of discrimination involved in it. Now, if we look at it from either the eastern, from India, or the western side here in the States, and I want to look at it from the western side first, if you happen to be a janitor, it's not really considered to be a very elevated job. I can speak on that subject because I was a janitor for 2 periods of my life. And you're the guy that comes in at night after everyone's gone and cleans everything up, and maybe people are conscious and take a little concern for leaving things in somewhat of an effort to facilitate you, or maybe they just leave a mess and don't care. And then when you meet people in public, oh, hi, I'm Mr. So-and-so, and what is it you do? Oh, I work as a janitor. And, it's not really, people are, oh, wow, very nice. Oh, wow, I wish I had that job. So it's a bit looked down upon. Now, of course, in our modern world, everyone tries for equality, but it's considered a menial job. It's considered a less than elevated activity. We strive for equality in seeing all living entities equal, and in seeing everyone equal in their particular activities and their particular work. But, the fact of the matter... Oh, excuse me. Dropped my glasses, my apologies. The fact of the matter is that there is a clear distinction. Particularly in India, we see a very clear distinction when it comes to a sweeper, what's also called a bungi. Bungi can mean one who's literally the cleaner of the toilets, or it can mean a street sweeper, someone who does the cleaning like that. So in India we have the caste system, which is very prominent now. Of course, the caste system, as it is now, is not the proper representation of the natural divisions of society. Krishna speaks in the Bhagavad Gita, Chaturvarna Mayashtrastam, Guna Karma Vibhagasaha, that according to one's qualities and one's activities, then it is determined what their position in society is, what their inclination is, what their nature is. Not artificially imposed on them. This is the difficulty with the current caste system. It is imposed by birth. Prabhupada loved to give the example, and he's given it many, many times. If someone is born the son of a judge, it doesn't mean they are automatically a judge. And if someone is born as a street sweeper, it doesn't mean they're destined for that their entire life. One can change their activities. Everyone has a different inclination. So this Bungi class, this sweeper class, because of the misunderstanding of the caste system, is very greatly ostracized. There have been many films and documentaries about this, particularly as it's represented in Calcutta and Bombay and Delhi. Vast communities. On the way from the temple in Calcutta to the airport, there's one vast Bungi colony which one passes. And not taken care of by the government. No facility is properly provided. Same thing is there in Bombay. There was this recent very popular movie, what was the name of that? Slumdog Millionaire. Thank you. Slumdog Millionaire. And they had that whole section in the film where it was very difficult living, a slum dwelling. So, the perception of the position of the Bungi, or in the West, the janitor, it's interesting because you can also analyze it from the makeup of the broom itself. Now, the broom is used as the main utensil. The plumber has his wrench, the Brahmin has his pen, and the Bungi has his broom. Now, in America, it's very interesting because the nature of the broom is that it's got a very long handle and it's held upright. And that way one is allowed to keep a distinction while sweeping and to feel a bit, glorified and dignified in their sweeping effort. Now, I don't know how many of you in our listening audience have been to India or have had the opportunity to see a broom in India, but it's very short. And it's made of just a few, straws or stiff wood particles tied together like that. And you have to bend over to use it. You become a little bent over and a little lowly, down closer to the work. So a more humble type of mindset comes with it. So I was noticing that even in the makeup of the broom, there's a certain type of thought process and a certain type of consciousness that goes. So I wanted to show tonight how something as simple as sweeping, as simple as the use of a broom, can bring about prema bhakti. So we have some nice examples of this, and the first example we're going to use this evening is Dukhi Krishna. Now, we've spoken about Dukhi Krishna before, and his life intersects with the activities of many Vaishnavas. So there's been common reference to him. Of course, Dukhi Krishna lived in the area of Ambika Kalna in the Bengal, just a couple of hours, if you will, from the current Mayapur temple. And Dukhi Krishna was the last child born to his mother and father, who all of his previous siblings had died. And they were very hopeful that the Lord of Death would not take this child. But that wasn't to be, of course, because Dukhi Krishna was a very special. It's actually his birth name was Dukhi. And they figured if they gave him this sorrowful name that the Lord of Death, Yamaraj, would avoid him. So in due course of time, he met and was initiated by Hridoy Chaitanya. Hrido Chaitanya became his guru. And Hrido Chaitanya was the disciple of Gadadhar Pandit. So, in this way, Hrido Chaitanya trained the young boy, but seeing that he had a very strong inclination towards study and wanting him to make the best of his life, Dukhi Krishna was sent by Hrido Chaitanya to Vrindavan. And there in Vrindavan he was placed with a letter from Hrido Chaitanya under the tutelage of Jiva Goswami. Jiva Goswami had a bit of a Gurukula, if you will, a little ashram, and he had 3 very, very particularly wonderful students in that ashram: Narottam, Srinivas, and Dukhi Krishna. And these 3 boys were in Vrindavan at a rather young age, not child, but they were young men, and they were there to develop their Krishna conscious skills under the tutelage of the remaining of the Goswamis' influences. They were trained by Jiva Goswami specifically, and they were each given different services. Jiva Goswami particularly gave to Dukhi Krishna the service of sweeping the paths in Seva Kunj. Now, Seva Kunj is a place in Vrindavan where the Ras Leela pastimes of Radha and Krishna take place. So many wonderful pastimes of the Lord have taken place there. And this was his regular service, to go each day with these stiff straw brooms and in a bent over way sweep the pathways so that they were kept nice and clean and beautiful. For the glorification of the Dham. I was speaking with one friend of mine last night that's visiting here in Alachua, Madhu Sudana, and he has a campaign that he's struggling to get off the ground to help with the cleansing and purification seva to the Dham of Vrindavan. But that's a whole other story. We could go into that and be here forever and ever. But at any rate, so in this cleaning, and because this is the place where in the evening Radha and Krishna would come and take their pastimes, have their activities. And so then he would clean it the next day so that it was nice and appropriate for them. So in this way, he was rendering this service. Very simple service, sweeping the road, sweeping the street. How much glory can there be in that? If you go to Vrindavan now, you'll see so many different devotees, so many different residents of Vrindavan, the Bungi community as they're called, sweeping the streets. And in this way they are just fulfilling a simple task. But what happens with that task? When you sweep something, the dust rises. And when that dust rises, it settles on your cloth, it settles on your body, and you become dirty. But this dust that Dukhi Krishna was bringing up, this was the dust of Seva Kunj. Incredibly purifying. Anyway, we know the story, not to go very long into the story, but we know the story how one morning when he was cleaning after his classes with Jiva Goswami, he found one beautiful golden bangle, and that bangle was very, very effulgent, very special. And so he took one small hand shovel and dug a hole, wrapped this bangle in a cloth and dug a hole and buried it because he knew someone special would come and ask for this. And the amazing quality of this bangle was that when it came in contact with the shovel he was using, the shovel turned to gold too. So in this way, Srimati Radhika eventually came to Dukhi Krishna herself. She was very pleased with 2 things. One, with his service attitude in his service to the Dham by cleaning Seva Kunj, and 2, by his humility. And in this way, she gave him the tilak that we now know as the Shamanandi tilak, gave him the name Shamananda, not Shamananda, but Shamananda. This is a name for Srimati Radharani, one who derives bliss from Srimati Radhika, from Shama, and gave him the blessings So he revealed this to Jiva Goswami, of course we know. And then eventually news got around to Hridoy Chaitanya, and of course this appeared to the external world because Shamananda was maintaining the humility involved with this. It appeared to the external world that he had taken a new name, had taken initiation from a new guru, had accepted a new type of tilak, all of which, as I was just reading in one letter from Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada had to deal with this in his very early days when some of his newer disciples came to India from the West, uninformed, and took initiation from others when they had already received initiation from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada spoke very strongly against this because this is not proper Vaishnava etiquette. So in the same way, Hridoy Chaitanya was concerned that this was what was going on. After all, Jiva Goswami was his good friend and such a stalwart member of the Vaishnava community. How could this go on? So eventually, as we've spoken the story many, many times, the situation was cleared up. Hridoy Chaitanya understood the real essence of the circumstances and was very happy that his disciple had made such nice advancement. But
question. Did Srimati Radhika give Dukhi Krishna the name Shamananda?
Yes.
She gave him the name.
So this name Shamananda was given by Radharani, and in this way we see that this humble, simple service of sweeping the streets, sweeping the walkways in Seva Kunj afforded him this wonderful circumstance, this wonderful blessing from Srimati Radhika. Now, in the same school, one of the close friends and classmates of Shamananda was Narottam Das Thakur. Narottam Das Thakur, as you may remember, I'm sure you do, we've spoken about him many times, was a prince by birth. This was his actual identity, his birthright. He came from a very wealthy family. His father was a Raj, a king, small king, but a king nonetheless. Very great opulence, very wonderful, comfortable lifestyle. And of course they were very concerned, the mother and father, about Narottam because they could see he had an inclination towards spiritual matters. And they did not want him to mix in with the sadhu types. So what they did was they arranged that he would be properly educated and, they would be somewhat restricted from certain types of association. At any rate, we know the story. We've spoken of it many times. Narottam was very successful in breaking away from them and leaving his family after receiving the blessings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Premtali is the place. And so then he also went to Vrindavan under the instruction of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda. And he studied there. Now, he also realized that when in Vrindavan, he would take initiation from Lokanath Goswami. Lokanath Goswami was one of the original Goswamis. He and Bhugarbha were both sent there early, before any of the other 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan as we know them. And they began the process of establishing the different holy places in Vrindavan and uncovering these wonderful pastime places of the Lord. So by this time that Narottam has come, many of these places have been established. Lokanath has retired, and he's living quietly in a small bhajan kutir, off in the quieter parts of Vrindavan. And Jiva Goswami arranges for the introduction to Lokanath Goswami of Narottam Das Thakur. And Narottam requests of Lokanath Goswami, "You're my guru. I want to take shelter of you. I want to be initiated by you. This is my destiny in life." So Lokanath, he requests him. He says, "So, what is your background?" Narottam humbly explains, "I'm a prince. I've come from a, Kshatriya background, so to speak." And Lokanath says, no, you're not qualified to be my disciple. You come from a very comfortable and palatial life. Living here in Vrindavan isn't suitable for you. I cannot accept you. Narottam very seriously wants this initiation because he has been told by Lord Chaitanya this is who he will be initiated by. He's known this for quite some time. So he requests, well, at least give me some service. And Lokanath says, no. I've taken a vow not to accept any disciples, and that means not to accept any service. So, I'm sorry, I cannot satisfy your desire this way. So he sends him away, but Narottam Das is very, very determined. And what he does is, of course, living out in the forest of Vrindavan, in the undeveloped areas there, means that the call of nature would be taken outside of the home. There's no indoor plumbing, as we call it, no toilets in the house. This was done some distance from where one would sit and practice his sadhana, and then some distance further one would go to the Jamuna and bathe. So Narottam gets one of these brooms, these stiff brooms in a bucket of water, the short brooms that require you to bend over and render this service. And every day, when his desired Guru Maharaj would rise in the morning and go to perform his morning call of nature, and then go to the Jamuna for taking bath, when he went to the Jamuna, then Narottam would go to this place and clean it, sprinkle some cow dung and water around and sweep everything into a hole and cover it up, and then arrange everything nicely and sweep the area free of any leaves or branches or anything like that, so that it was a nice situation. So after quite some time of this going on, you have to remember that Lokanath was quite elderly at this point, and not only quite elderly, but extremely advanced. So these externals were not exactly the foremost thing in his mind. He was, there within the world, but he was not within this world. He was in the pastimes of Radha and Krishna. So at any rate, after some time, he begins to notice that this area is being cleaned. Someone is coming here with the broom and water and sweeping this every day. This means someone is rendering service to me. I have taken a vow, no one can render service to me. All right, I'll have to find out who this is. So what he does is he one morning goes to take care of his call to nature, and then he slips around the corner and hides in waiting as Narottam comes with his bucket of water and his broom to perform his sweeping activity and cleaning. So he jumps out and he catches Narottam and he chastises him. I told you, don't render any service to me. I'm not accepting disciples. So Narottam, of course, we've many times told this wonderful example he gives. Just as a young girl may fix her mind on a particular boy as her husband and cannot be persuaded otherwise, similarly, I have accepted you as my spiritual master and I cannot be turned away. So Lokanath likes this very much. He says, all right, you continue with this, but don't make an issue of it. Don't say anything about it. Just keep it quiet. So for 1 year, Narottam continues this service to his guru very happily, very satisfied, very peacefully. And after some time, Lokanath then says to him one morning, says, by the strength of your vow, you have broken my vow. I would be very honored to have you as my disciple. So then he arranges with Jiva Goswami for a proper initiation ceremony, Agnihotra, taking of the vows, everything like that. So here's another wonderful example of how someone, just by their humble service of sweeping the area, cleaning the ground, is able to, very wonderfully get the mercy of his spiritual master. Another example I'd like to give, we haven't really spoken about this personality in any of our previous webcasts here, and that is Maharaj Prataparudra. Now, for some of you out there, you may not even be familiar with who Maharaj Prataparudra is. He is the king of Jagannath Puri during the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And during that time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when Mahaprabhu was living in Puri, there was devotional service was abounding. It was everywhere. And Prataparudra Maharaj was very, very anxious to get the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He was the king, but he understood Mahaprabhu was the greatest devotee, personality of God in himself. But because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu had taken this strict vow as a sannyasi, he did not mix with the king. He did not have anything to do with persons of sense gratification in their lives, persons of opulence in this way. So I want to read some sections and just kind of follow along a little bit the story as it's told by Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami himself in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, very, very expertly. And just give a little background on this. This is in the Madhya Lila, the 12th chapter. We find that Mahaprabhu has just returned from his tour of South India. And that when he returned to Jagannath Puri, of course, all the devotees were very anxious to see him. But Maharaj Prataparudra, it mentions, was very, very eager to meet Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So he sent a letter to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, of course, we know, was very close to the Lord while he stayed in Jagannath Puri. And he begged Sarvabhauma, because Sarvabhauma was at the time, the main priest of the Jagannath temple, the main pundit there, and that means he would have been closely associated with the king, Maharaj Prataparudra, because the king was very supportive of the activities of the Jagannath temple. And so he wrote him a letter and said, please, get permission from the Lord for me to have his association. I want to see him. So Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had the unpleasant task of writing back to the king, I'm sorry, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu will not see you. So then the king wrote him another letter. And he said, look, if Lord Chaitanya won't agree to see me, please appeal to the devotees of Lord Chaitanya. Because the devotees, they're more merciful than the Lord. And if you ask them, then they will ask the Lord. And then maybe the Lord will agree. So in this way, as Maharaj Prataparudra said in his letter, the devotees associated with the Lord, if they are favorably disposed, then I have a chance, the mercy of the Lord. If Gaurahari will not show his mercy to me, I will give up my kingdom and become a mendicant, begging from door to door. So when Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya got this letter, he was quite anxious. The king, the ruler of the kingdom, the person in charge of keeping all order and everything functioning, was about to give everything up and go become a beggar, as the Chaitanya Charitamrita says, with an ivory earring. This was a symptom of becoming a mendicant, to wear an ivory earring and go about door to door begging, one of the symptoms like that. So Sarvabhauma met with all the devotees, and Sarvabhauma encouraged them, we have to get the Lord to agree. The king is a wonderful devotee. The king was also a good associate with Ramananda Roy. And Ramananda Roy was also willing to speak on his behalf. So they were quite amazed, the devotees, the amount of devotion Maharaj Prataparudra had for Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And they decided, look, if we go to Mahaprabhu in Mass and ask him, he must agree. So they all came before him, headed by Nityananda. Nityananda was in on this too. And they went before Mahaprabhu and stood there. And Mahaprabhu saw them. He said, what have you come here to say? I can see you have something on your mind you want to speak about, but you're not speaking. So eventually Nityananda, being the closest to Mahaprabhu as his brother and the senior amongst the assembled Vaishnavas, he stepped forward. He said, yes, we have something very important we want to speak to you about. We're afraid to ask you because we don't know how you're going to react. So, it may or may not be to your liking. But here's what the matter is. The king of Orissa has decided he will renounce his kingdom and become a beggar if you do not give him your darshan. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu thought about this. Nityananda continued, the king has expressed his desire to see your moon-like face with his full satisfaction. He would like to raise your lotus feet and touch them to his heart. So Mahaprabhu, when he heard these things, internally, his mind became very satisfied. But externally, he had to maintain his vows as a sannyasi, so he began to speak harshly. He said, I can understand all of you desire to take me to the king. So, what to speak of my own spiritual advancement? All the people will blaspheme me. They will criticize me. And what to speak of Damodar, he will chastise me. So you may remember that Sarup Damodar was very attentive to the personal behavior of the Lord. He said, I shall not see the king. I shall not see the king. But I will do it if Damodar says it's all right to do it. So Swarup Damodar replied to the Lord. He said, my dear Lord, he said, you are the independent supreme personality of Godhead. You know everything. So you know what is permissible and what is not permissible. You will do as you want to. It is not anything to do with me. I'm just an insignificant jiva. How can I give you any instruction? I will say this. The king is very attached to you. He has great love and affection toward you. And I know that you are feeling the same toward him. Thus I can understand that by virtue of the king's affection, somehow you will give him your darshan. So this was Swarup Damodar's conclusion. So the Inanda said, who in the three worlds is it that can ask you to meet with the king? So they continued on like this. And the Inanda presented some different arguments what should be done. So what Lord Chaitanya decided, all right, I will not meet with the king, but I will give a piece of my cloth. He took one of his old chutters and he said, you give this to the king and he may worship it. So, Nityananda, this was his idea. And so they took the cloth and gave it to Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya. And Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya gave it to the king. And the king immediately began to worship this cloth as if it was non-different than Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. He began to render humble service by seva. So, in this way, Ramananda Roy was brought into the equation. And Ramananda Roy also was asking on the king's behalf if the meeting could be arranged with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So Mahaprabhu could understand Ramananda Roy is such an intimate and close associate. He is asking for this. So he wants it very much, but I cannot meet with the king. But I will do this. Send his son. Because the father represents the son. At least the father should represent the son in action, in motive, in activity. So he said, send the son to me. Now when the son came, it's mentioned here, very, very amazing, that, let me just catch up here. Yes. That the prince was very youthful, very beautiful, and he had a blackish complexion and lotus eyes. And he was dressed in yellow cloth, and he had jeweled ornaments decorating his body. And it says in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that anyone that saw him was immediately reminded of Krishna. And so when Mahaprabhu saw him, he was reminded of Krishna and began to experience great ecstasy upon seeing this young boy. And Mahaprabhu said, here is a great devotee, for upon seeing him, one can remember the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is the interesting thing about the association of devotees. Upon seeing a devotee, we're able to remember Krishna. Some of us, just a quick little side thing here, some of us in our occupational activities have the good fortune of seeing devotees during the day. I work in a store that in our community of Alachua, no less than 20 or 25 devotees a day come in that store to shop. So daily I'm seeing the Vaishnavas. While I may be engaged in so-called mercantile pursuit, I'm able to see the devotees and remember Krishna. So it's a very, very nice experience. So Mahaprabhu said like this. So being agitated in this way by seeing the boy, and remember Krishna, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu embraced the prince to his chest. The young boy, and embraced him and just felt such love. And as the prince was touched by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he immediately began to manifest love of God in his own body. So then, after this, they began to cry and dance. There was a kirtan, and then the boy returned home. Once again, the king, understanding that this son of his had come in contact with the Lord, also embraced him and felt very satisfied, just satisfied in the same way that he felt by worshiping the cloth of the Lord. But the thing is, none of this was sufficient for him. He very much desired still to get the personal darshan of the Lord. Now, about this time, the Ratha Yatra is to take place in Jagannath Puri. During the Rath Yatra, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Chaitanya Charitamrita describes, divided himself into 7 forms and manifested in the 7 different kirtan players. And Chaitanya Charitamrita is very specific. Who led the kirtan, who danced, who played the mridanga, like that. And Lord Chaitanya manifested into each of these 7 kirtan parties. And the kirtans were absolutely incredible, because each kirtan party thought, Lord Chaitanya's just here with us. We are so fortunate. Let's let the kirtan be ecstatic to all end. So in this way, they were going like this. Now, there were 2 people that were able to see, wait a minute, Lord Chaitanya's in every kirtan party. One of them was Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya, and the other one was Maharaj Prataparudra. So the different devotees could understand that Maharaj Prataparudra had gotten the same special mercy that Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya had received. Now, seeing this, the king, Prataparudra, decided that this was such a wonderful, it just evoked such emotion and devotion, he wanted to render service to Lord Jagannath. So it mentions in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that as the Lord was moved from his temple to his chariot, King Prataparudra personally engaged in the service to the Lord by taking a broom and sweeping the street in front of the Lord. Now here is the king, the highest ranking person in the entire kingdom, the wealthiest of all individuals, the most respectable of all individuals. And what has he done? He has gone before Sri Jagannath with a broom and bent over and swept the road for Jagannath's pleasure. It says the king then sprinkled that road that he had swept with scented sandalwood water. Although he was the owner of the royal throne, he performed this menial task of sweeping the road and scenting the road with sandalwood water for the pleasure of Lord Jagannath. Thus, he became a suitable candidate for the mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Now, this kirtan pastime, I kind of switched the 2 places around. This is just a bit later after this. Now, after the kirtan, Mahaprabhu retired to the Govinda Ballabha gardens of Lord Jagannath for taking a bit of a rest, a little nap. So, in this way, Maharaj Prataparudra had been advised by Sarvabhauma Bhattacharya that he should give up his royal dress and dress himself as a mendicant like he had thought to do, but just put the dress of a mendicant on, not actually become a mendicant. After all, he was the king of the entire country. So he encouraged him, dress like this, in the dress of a Vaishnava mendicant, and go into the garden where Lord Chaitanya is. And so it mentions that Maharaj Prataparudra, in the guise of a humble Vaishnava sage, entered into the gardens where Lord Chaitanya was, and with folded hands took permission from the devotees first, and then fell down and touched the lotus feet of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was lying on the ground with his eyes closed, resting after such ecstatic hours and hours and hours of kirtan in 7 places at the same time. 7 times as exhausted, we might say. So then the king, touching the Lord's feet, began to recite various prayers from the Rasa Leela section of the Srimad Bhagavatam that he had memorized. This was how great of a devotee he was. He knew these parts of the Bhagavatam. So when Mahaprabhu heard these verses while he was laying there resting, he was so satisfied. He said, please go on reciting, go on reciting, go on reciting. He encouraged the king. And so the king continued reciting different verses and different verses. And then the Lord rose up in ecstatic love and embraced the reciter of these verses, who in his heart he knew to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It mentions here that, 235, let me just get to this right here. Krishnadas Kaviraj Goswami points out that although it was in his heart, Sri Chaitanya knew everything that was happening. Externally, he did not disclose it. nor did he disclose that he knew he was actually talking to Maharaj Prataparudra. Seeing the Lord's mercy upon King Prataparudra, the devotees praised the king's good fortune and made up their minds to also bless him. Submissively offering prayers to the Lord and offering obeisances to Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the king then quietly slipped outside. It goes on to mention that Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gave his mercy to Prataparudra Maharaj. But why? Because of the humble position Maharaj Prataparudra had shown by sweeping the road in front of Lord Jagannath. Now, there's one devotee I know here in Alachua that I'm going to allow to remain nameless, spends half his time here in Alachua and half of his time in Barshana. Now, I don't know how many of you in our listening audience have been to Barshana, but there's a very large angled set of stairs that go up to the temple of Srimati Radharani. And this devotee, his daily service when he's staying in Barshana is to take such a broom and sweep these stairs from top to bottom. And there are a lot of stairs. Now, when this devotee is here in Alachua, his daily service is to take the broom and sweep the veranda around the temple and then the pathway from the temple out to the parking lot. So this is the mood of a genuine humble devotee, that wherever they are, whatever their activity is, their seva goes on. And this is a wonderful mood that we can see the steadiness of it. How can such a thing in these different examples here be so exalted when it's simply sweeping? But because, as we mentioned in the beginning of this class, materially speaking, sweeping is seen to be a lower class activity, something that a lesser person does. Therefore, one who adopts that mood of humility in his service to the Lord, very, very satisfying. Prabhupada quotes the phrase very many times, Bhavo Grahi Janardana. Bhavo Grahi Janardana. What does that mean? It means Janardana, Krishna, sees only the bhava, or the mood, that one renders the service with. Externally, the externals may not be properly qualified or may not be this or that, but the mood of service is what determines the mercy the Lord reciprocates with. So we should keep this in mind. We may be very, very small devotee, very simple devotee, washing the pots in the kitchen, or we may be a big temple president or GBC or Diksha Guru. These positions are very temporary. These positions are not what determine Krishna's mercy on us. What determines Krishna's mercy is the mood that we render this service with. So it's a wonderful opportunity for us to appreciate that it's the sincerity and mood in the heart that we see in the life of Dukhi Krishna that awarded him the benediction of Srimati Radharani, of Narottam Das Thakur that achieved his goal of initiation from Lokanath Goswami, of Maharaj Prataparudra that got him that opportunity to embrace the feet of the Lord to his heart, all by their simple and humble activity of sweeping. So this is a very, very wonderful thing for us to think of during this month of Kartik that we've begun. What simple, humble service can I take up for the satisfaction of the Lord? How can I do something that will allow me, that will enable me, help me to qualify myself to get the mercy of the Lord? And let us not forget the most humble of personalities, Srila Prabhupada. When he began this movement at 26 Second Avenue, who was there? Some hippies were coming. He had no real followers at that time. So who do you think swept the floor after the programs? Who washed the pots after the prasadam? This was Srila Prabhupada. And what did this humility get Srila Prabhupada? Krishna was so satisfied, Lord Chaitanya was so satisfied that he was able to establish this world Sankirtan movement on the order of his own Guru Maharaj and receive the blessings of all the Acharyas. So let us try and develop this mood of humble service that we see present in the lives of these great Vaishnava saints. And with that, we'll finish another episode this evening in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. Hare Krishna. I'm your host, Chaturatma. If anyone has any questions, would like to add anything, or wants to bring any subjects up in the chat room, we're more than happy to let you do so. Just log in there or type up whatever you got. I see we have a nice gathering of devotees there tonight. One thing I do want to remind devotees that this is a wonderful service being rendered to you by the devotees here at Krishna.com. This is a free internet service that goes on 5 nights of the week. Monday nights we talk about lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. On Tuesday nights we talk about the process of...
now he's talking about Vaishnava Aparad.
About the process of avoiding Vaishnava Aparad. On Wednesday nights we have live kirtan. On Thursday nights, Mother Indrani, the senior most member of our community here, speaks about the teachings of Bhakti Tirtha Maharaj. And on Friday nights, Ramya Prabhu speaks from the Bhagavad Gita. So these are all opportunities for all of you to hear and hear and hear and hear and hear about the Krishna conscious activities present here at Krishna.com. And it takes a lot to put these off. So if any of you would like to support these activities, have an opportunity or some resources that you would like to funnel towards Krishna.com, just go to the website and go to donations at Krishna.com, and there will be instructions there on how you can help to support this wonderful opportunity for association with devotees from all over the world.
Or Krishna.com/donate.
Krishna.com/donate is another way you can find it. And this is so wonderful because we've regularly noticed in the chat room that we have devotees joining from New Zealand, Australia, from India, from Russia, Poland, Israel, Scotland, England, Fiji, Chile, Brazil, Canada, and of course all over the United States. So very, very nice opportunity for you to help to facilitate this. And once again, we want to thank all of you for tuning in, and we appreciate your encouragement by your presence. And we will be back again next week on Monday evening at 8 p.m. for another episode in the lives of the Vaishnavacharyas. Hare Krishna.